Yo, yo, welcome in, Magic players, much love. Really interesting discussion on will robots take over the metagame? Deep Brain AI Magic here with Scott. Scott is taking a PhD in metagaming, and he has been taking a look at this deep mind analysis of Magic. So what exactly is going on here?
Okay, well, Google have a um, think tank type thing called DeepMind, which is
Hmm.
an organization which runs a whole bunch of what we call neural networks. And these are types of computers which can learn how to play games. And so far, um, it's learned how to play retro games such as Atari Breakout and things like that perfectly. And
Hmm.
recently, I know it's big in the news. There was a program designed that beat one of the grandmasters of Go or whatever it was at Go for the first time. So right now they're working on a program which is learning how to play card games such as Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone, and they're running into problems. They just published a paper talking about the difficulties, but it's
Hmm.
clear that the fact that they're doing it means that we're getting closer to a program that could possibly play these kind of games.
Hmm. So this is kind of similar situation to what is it, Deep Blue? This is the computer that
Yeah.
played Gary Kasparov at chess. I know Gary Kasparov beat it the first time or won the matchup, but how far has computer progressed in chess? I think I heard that people are cheaters are getting busted for running to the camera to the bathroom and using their smartphone to computer to run moves and stuff like that. So is this a future possibility in Magic where your opponent keeps running to the bathroom between turns and the computer is feeding them the right play, or is that
Um, Maybe I think the big difference between the Deep Blue and Kasparov and the computers we have now is that the computer that beat Kasparov or eventually beat Kasparov, I can't remember. It beat Kasparov over a number of like 24 games or something like that. It won the most.
I know
Um,
Kasparov won the initial matchup, but sorry that we don't know the 100% factual, but
anyway,
the
the
exact
point the
history.
point
Yeah, sure. It
the
won
point I
some
was
games
making.
against Kasparov.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a different style of computing. What they had back then was it's called brute force. And what a brute force computer does is that it goes through every single option, every single turn, and just settles on the best one. And the problem with that is it doesn't know initially what options are kind of good in the first place and what ones are kind of not. It just goes through everything.
Yeah, so it's wasted, tons of wasted
Yeah,
computations.
absolutely.
The
Whereas
best players, yeah,
the
it
neural
has
network computer,
heuristics, right?
yeah,
Right. So I was reading about this in this book, Bounce, that was talking recently about Deep Blue versus Kasparov, and it was saying, you're right, there's running all these computations on irrelevant plays, and
yeah,
Kasparov is able to win because he has heuristics, which are basically automated decision making, where he just rules out the vast majority
yeah,
of possibilities, whereas the computer is running through even the worst
yeah.
possible plays. So is that
Yeah.
what these computers are starting to
Yeah,
do?
that's why they could beat Lee Sedol and Go, because these computers operate totally differently. They operate the same way a human brain does. And the type of computer they've got working on Magic, it has an external memory. So it operates as if it's working off a short-term memory like we do.
Hmm.
Um, unlike Deep Blue, which is just like sort of like a fresh face every single time, every single turn. You
So the
mentioned like
computers
going
are
to the
literally
math.
getting smarter.
Yeah,
Sorry to
absolutely.
interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, go for it. There's actually one. I don't know if you've heard of it, Robo Rosewater, which is a recurrent neural network. Yeah,
The card generator. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That's a similar one, except that doesn't. That's not. I don't believe that's running off like an external memory or anything like that. So that's why you get cards that are just totally like either busted, stupid, broken, or just don't make sense. Whereas
Generally
this
don't make
one,
any sense.
absolutely. Whereas this one has the whole library in its head, so it's going to be a little bit better. But in terms of like going to the bathroom to check your AI, the thing is with Magic, unlike chess and Go, it's still a game of partial information. An AI, no matter how smart it is never going to know what the opponent has in hand, is never going to know what card it's going to draw next, unless you're doing some kind of like shenanigans. But like, you
Hmm.
know, so I the sort of question is like, even if it was a perfect AI, it could make the best move.
It can
Would
still
that even
lose.
absolutely? It could
Well,
still
it can
join
tell
the
you.
ad.
Perhaps it tells you the 60 or the 70% play, and over
Yeah,
a long series eventually. I mean, it's
yeah.
probably less obvious than in chess, but over time. And I mean,
Mm,
maybe we get to a point where you plug it into your brain, right? Like we have external USBs in our head. I mean, that's not that in the far future. We might not see that in our lifetime, but we're definitely headed in that
what a
direction.
shame. Yeah. um, yeah. So I wouldn't be worried about that sort of thing, as some people have expressed since this paper came out. So the thing that worried me, well, not sort of worried, but made me think was the idea that a deck might be able to evaluate cards, might be able to design decks to a degree, might be able to play test decks by itself. So all those things sort of would absolutely change how we approach the game, I think.
That's fascinating. So, I mean, maybe the you the computer brain builds a gauntlet and then it tests the gauntlet and then it tells you which deck plays the best in the
Yeah,
projected metagame or something like that. And then
absolutely.
all you do is you learn the deck or it builds the Pro Tour winning deck or whatever. How far away are we from
Sure.
seeing that happen?
And even if it didn't have the capacity to do that, because in each meta there's going to be, even if you eliminate the cards that are, constructed unplayable, um, you're still looking at a couple of hundred cards it needs to think about, and that's tons of possibilities right there. But if it were to understand just simply how to play Magic well, and the user were to input two separate decks and say, hey, play these against each other this many times, and it might just produce a number saying this one wins 60% of the time, this one wins 40% of the time, you could eliminate like so much time spent playtesting like some of these big teams do, where they just, sit in a hotel rooms, play like 100 million games or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't think that's really bad or good. I think that's just something that might happen. I think the important thing to remember is that like we probably shouldn't be that scared.
It's not a
Unless,
scary thing so much.
it's not a scary thing, but it depends how you as a player think of Magic. If you just think of Magic as the game as you're playing it, well, probably not much is going to change. But if you look at Magic as the whole the big picture, the big culture, even today, computers have taken a lot of things away from that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I know, there are plenty of people I know who wouldn't play Magic if the sort of allure of cracking packs and stuff like that wasn't there. That sort of weird, naive hope and that excitement that you get from doing that. If that didn't exist, they wouldn't be playing the game. And I feel like computers, where you now have stuff like Gatherer, where you can just like look up cards and just
Mm-hmm.
design decks like on your computer without having that discovery of like, oh, check out this new card that I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not a scary change. It's not like a huge major change, but that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
ways that Magic as a whole has been impacted by computers.
Definitely,
So,
the information systems. I mean, in the dark ages, internet. I mean, Magic came out '93. The internet
mm,
really took off and hit consumers '94, really '95. So I mean, the dark ages, it was really you don't know what is even out there. You're playing and you see new cards. Again, your
yeah,
opponent plays a new card is the norm. Maybe you have the Scry or Duelist or whatever, and you can look it up. But yeah, now it's totally different where a set might leak a month before, right? It's
yeah,
that, and that is just obviously going to accelerate,
mm,
right? I think the biggest ramifications of this are for tournament testing, like you were saying. The first team that can really abuse and harness the power of computer brains to automate their testing, if they can do that, they'll come out so far ahead. They have just
yeah,
have. I mean, it's really it's really a struggle to prepare for a pro tour. We see the winning decks are not necessarily really amazing decks. They're the best of the bunch because it's so constrained. You have 2 weeks or a week. You don't have a lot of time. So
yeah,
like the last pro tour, for instance, pro tour what is it, Rise of the Eldrazi is a fitting name for.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have the colorless Eldrazi and the blue-red Eldrazi, the two best decks of that tournament. But it turned out that maybe blue-white Eldrazi, for instance, is way better. Just no one had time to develop that. So, I mean, if you had the computer that got, if you only have 2 weeks, like you're saying, you're in the hotel room, you're testing, it seems like a ridiculous advantage if this is a thing that actually would be able to do that. Do you think it will be able to do that eventually? Is that where it's headed?
I feel the age of being fairly negative about the possibilities of computers is kind of behind us. For chess, they said a computer couldn't play chess. Well, look, it did. They said a computer could never play Go. Look, it did. So to say a computer will never be able to play Magic, that feels a little bit naive. I mean, I don't know how long it would take. Judging by this paper, they're in the early stages. But to say it would never happen or could not happen, I think you're probably kidding yourself a little bit if you were.
It's a question of how soon, right? That's the question. How soon?
Well, the problem that they're having right now is that the computer can understand just basic card details like casting cost, type of card, whatnot. It really struggles with cards which alter the context for future sort of plays. So, for example, is it Quicken, the card that changes your next sorcery to instant speed or something like that? It can't handle that because it's changing the values of the next card to something that is different to what's on that card.
Interesting.
So, as soon as you're stacking up all these things in its head, it starts to get a bit confused. And the programmers don't really know how to incorporate that into the code.
I don't know enough about coding to really speculate, but I mean, computers learn now, right? Right. Computers are learning. Like you said, this thing is learning. And I was just reading this. I mean, for the vast history of computation, it's been 100% processing. But now computers are like 90% processing, 10% learning. So it's early stages if you think about it. Me, and I'm not alone in having played the game for 20 years. How long has this thing been learning Magic for? 2 months, a month, right? 3 months?
Yeah, it's not a long time at all.
Give it a couple years, right? Give it a couple years, and things will really accelerate.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. And like, I think it would be really good if they had a decent AI. If you've ever played the console Magic games where you just sort of trick the opponent because it's just a not great program.
Exactly.
And it's really easy to tell, it's really easy to figure out how to trick it. So being able to play against a player that's just perfect for testing purposes or whatever would just be really handy for one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously there are ways to test against people like on MPGO really easily, but to be able to plug in a deck just to this computer, just whatever cards you like, rather than hoping that someone else is going to be online that has a deck you want to play test against, be pretty good, And like you said, maybe.
It's also a huge time saver because, I mean, the way that I've dealt with that is building 2 decks and playing them against each other. But let me tell you, that's not a whole lot of fun. It's a grind, preparing for, I mean, I spent hundreds of hours preparing for certain tournaments, really an insane amount of time. So having computers that can automate this will free people from really mundane tasks, honestly. I mean, testing is grinding. I think it's actually a good thing if humans it's not the glamorous fun part of Magic. The fun part is playing in the tournaments or playing at FNM or playing again, or recording, whatever. I mean, if this is something that does the testing for all the humans, awesome. I mean, I think it would be better if everyone had access to it. Is the one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think there would be rules for or against that if one team had access and is steroids or anything like that? No.
I don't think Wizards would be that archaic. I think if it was a third party program, then there's not really anything they could do in the first place. So I think the one thing to point out is the impact of sort of human error and human bluffing, which are things that an AI isn't gonna handle. MTGO you can only bluff to a degree. You can like
Mhm.
tap mana as a regular sort of control deck on your second turn, and then like untap to represent like counter magic, or just not even, whatever. Do all your dodgy stuff. But in
There's a
like
few things, right?
when you're playing in a real tournament, there's way more things you can do. You can go for the riding the life total change down, even when you have like counter magic up or whatever it is. So to make them think that their attack's going to go through, whatever it is, stuff like that, which you can't do online. So if you're continually testing and what have you against an AI, and everyone starts rocking up to the tournament with the perfect deck, I think the player that understands the sort of human element of the game is going to start to be a little bit better, as opposed to the player who understands the mathematical side of the game.
That would be cool if it really pushes that element of the game. Although on the flip side, you can't bluff a computer, can you?
No, you can't bluff a computer. That's the thing. The computer player isn't going to be playing in the Pro Tour. I mean,
unless you have that in the pocket. I mean,
unless
that
you
would
have the
be
USB port.
cheating.
Yeah,
and
unless
that's
you are
the far, far future. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. But here's me in my.
But if everyone has it plugged in,
that won't-
are they? Is it cheating?
God, we're getting into some real like weird philosophical stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I'm also
point,
thinking Magic
So,
by
like,
its nature has Magic by its nature has decisions that have pros and cons. So I mean, there's like infinite branching. The metagame evolves, right? So I mean, it would be interesting. I mean, it's possible things aren't even solvable. That if you set up a computer to solve a format, it doesn't solve. It just goes in an endless loop of this deck rises, and then this deck rises, and then this deck rises, and then etc.
Yeah,
and then you don't get any kind of meaningful data out of it.
yeah,
It's possible.
yeah. I thought about this before, and I was thinking about metagames where there was sort of like one deck which was just sort of like the objective like best deck, and the only one I could think of was Pro Tour Return to, I think it was Return to Ravnica, where Stanislav Sivka won with the eggs deck. Remember that?
I do remember.
And that was like that deck sort of just like destroyed. But even then, in that meta, no one was playing a deck which countered eggs because no one thought eggs was going to get played. So
yeah, like the computer tells you to run 4 main deck Stony Silences or something like that.
yeah,
It's preparing for some metagame that doesn't.
The Travis Wu
exist.
AI, Stony Silence.
Yeah, I have main deck some Stony Silence in my day.
Of course. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, it could just keep going around in circles, which might be a thing. But for us players like me, like who goes to the odd FNM, just doesn't. I'm not a competitive player by any means. The thing that really, really made me feel not great was the whole idea that cards that I like to play with, that aren't necessarily top tier cards, I don't want to be told by a computer that this card will never, ever, ever work. To say
Man, it sucks when a player tells you that. When a computer tells you, it's really sad.
Absolutely. If a player tells me, I could say,
the computer tells you you're bad. It's like,
yeah, you don't.
Damn
want
it,
to
I can't argue.
I don't want to get told. I don't want to get told that Descendants Path will never, ever, ever win a Pro Tour. Like how dare you tell me that? Like, so it's probably not going to happen. I mean, it's very definitely not going to happen. But as long as a computer's not telling me, there's that sort of naive hope. And I'm sure a lot of players are like that. A lot of players who just like to brew their own stuff. There's a naive hope that maybe you're just going to be the guy who cracks this meta, cracks this card, whatever. And if a computer deck designer were to just say, hey, I can't find a deck for this card that beats this deck or this deck or this deck, sorry. That's going to remove a lot of the allure from the game that I think I mentioned, like with the cracking packs, like that style of like hope and maybe just I could do this, type sort of mentality.
Here's a question I have.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Sorry to interrupt that, but this is too entertaining. So say you have a really successful computer deck designer that is also good at writing articles and content and is wildly more popular than any human content producer deck designer. Could that happen? Like, I mean, Robo Rosewater is extremely entertaining and has a lot of
Oh my,
followers,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
His wordings are excellent.
Could could the biggest magic Twitter be a robot? Could the biggest magic personality be a robot? Like, is that just more creative and entertaining and random than like a human? Is that is that possible thing that could happen?
There is right now, um, on I think it's on Reddit. There's a sort of a computer program which analyzes the comments of a particular like subreddit and creates a sort of AI user who represents the overall like feelings of that subreddit and then posts comments in other subreddits.
And
And
it's
it's
hard
always
to
and
distinguish, right?
it's really satirical. Like, I mean, you can tell by the username, they don't hide it. So it's more of a satire type, hey, this is what you're all like kind of thing. Um, so I think getting like genuine content and getting it to sound like it's not like getting it to sound like it's not a computer. Yeah, I mean, like I said before, you can't really say that a computer could never ever do this. It would be naive to say that. So I think, yeah, absolutely, a computer could learn how to write about magic. A computer could learn how to be entertaining. Um, but I don't want to think about that. That would
I
suck.
do. I don't want
I
my
want to.
job to
I
be
want a job.
replaced by robots. That's why I
Ah,
make
I
videos
suppose
now
it would.
because
It would free us up to just sort of like live in the forest
uh, or serve the robots.
or surf the robots. Oh, that would suck.
Okay. Back to reality. Back to
Back to
reality.
reality. Snap back.
Back to reality. So, a different kind of reality. So here's something that would actually be useful for this is so maybe it tells you the best deck or it solves the metagame. It can identify plays. Say that you plug in the deck lists and the situation, and it spits out if you make this play, you win 55% of the time. You make this play 45% of the time. Seems like you would learn really fast. Or it's like,
Hmm.
there's a close mulligan. You can ask some people, and they say for this, for that reason. The computer says no for this reason, or whatever. Or you also maybe perhaps you plug into two decks, and then it tells you how to play the match. Like if you do this turn 3, then you will win 40%. If you do this, you will win 60%. So it sends you a report of the matchup where it's like, here's the high percentage plays, and here's what not to do would be, and it uses heuristics to eliminate like anything below 40%. It just shows you like the plays in 40% or above. So that would be really interesting. It spits out, so you don't even have to play. It gives you the deck and spits out a report on how to play the matchup, and you just read that, and then go in against some human that has been testing with other humans. And I mean, that would be really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would be a great tool for learning, like you said. I think that's one of the things that a lot of folks struggle with, like that mathematical side, that you can think about magic in percents. And if that's how an AI is just going to think from the start, that's, that will accelerate your learning. Yeah, absolutely. I think that could be really positive. Yeah. I mean, I would love for AI players. I mean, I think that's what I've sort of said. Like, an AI player would be fantastic, assuming that no one's using it to cheat. Um, but I think the difference is between the AI player and the deck designer. Like, each one would bring totally different things to the table, and I think the AI player would be a lot more positive.
By the way, I don't know how it's going to sound in the recording, but just now you've gone kind of glitchy. However,
Oh, really?
you sound like a robot, so I think it's okay. So if those of you listening have a problem, just imagine that Scott is a robot, and no
All right.
problem. Yeah, so I mean, overall, it's just really interesting. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
we want to know where things are going, ideally. So I really do foresee a future where you have an app, some kind of software app. You run it through the brain. If you have any questions, you just run it through the brain. I mean, maybe. I mean, I could see it as a business opportunity not for me, but for these people who figure it out, who it's software as a service. You pay like, $20 a month to sign up, and you have access to it, because this isn't something that everyone should necessarily be able to access, right? or is it?
It depends how the software gets used, because I mean,
It offers value, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it offers value. I mean,
I would pay for it.
Google purchased DeepMind for like hundreds of millions of dollars. So I mean, they're probably going to want some kind of like profit.
yeah. Subscription service makes sense.
Hopefully, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a lot to think about. Do you have anything else? I kind of ran out of steam.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I mean, I think we can only talk about this so much without getting a computer science kind of guy in here.
Yeah, sorry, computer science people, if we
How was
way
about
off
understanding how computers work?
Yeah, I mean that's not me, but I mean we'll revisit this in a year or 2 years once things develop.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you, Scott. If for those of you watching, if you want to reach Scott, ask him some questions or follow him, how would they do that?
I have a Twitter account at Games and Scott.
James and Scott.
Games and Scott, if you want to learn about metagaming theory in any game,
Yeah.
and how to think about games a little bit more than you already do.
Yeah, PhD, getting a PhD in metagaming, and he contributed to the Deck Mastery, Learning from Deck Crafting ebook. Before it was out, we were talking about metagaming and Magic and how to convey this to players. So really interesting thoughts on that. So yeah, give him a follow at Games and Scott on Twitter. Thank you all. Let us know what you think in the comments. Where do you think? What do you see the use of this being, or where is it going? What's the wildest thing that could happen? And yeah, tell us what you think. Any things?
No, exactly what you said.
Peace and love. See you all tomorrow in the comments.